Good Tuesday morning, and I'm gonna practice it. I don't know if it's as perfect, but as my co-host would probably say to all of you, 𝙍𝙚𝙖𝙡 𝙇𝙞𝙬. So with that, let's give my co-host Stewart a rock star welcome since we last saw him, since he last saw all of you. So let's do it. Let's give him that rock star welcome. All right. Here we go. Woohoo! Stewart, getting you warmed up, buddy. Getting you warmed up.
Let's go.
Yeah, I hear you in the room. So, how you doing?
Good. How about you, Bill?
I'm doing well. So, did I say it correctly? 𝙍𝙚𝙖𝙡 𝙇𝙞𝙬,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So there we go. There we go. Practicing my Spanish with all of you, with Stewart as well. So Stewart, since we last saw each other several weeks back in our episodes of Real Living in Chicago, what's drop this information for us? What's happening with the local real estate market? Any significant changes in your opinion?
A little bit. So what I'm noticing is buyers are starting to come out again because interest rates went down, which is really great. Activity's up. Sellers are staying on the market and coming on the market. So that's good. Still a little bit low on inventory. But I think what is positive in my mind is buyers are a little bit more savvy, not so anxious to have to pay, exorbitant prices, over asking and going crazy to, buy something. They're negotiating. They're trying to negotiate. So that, in my mind, is good. It keeps the market honest, for lack of a better term.
Right.
And sellers are starting to realize that they can't ask for the obscene price. So,
right.
I think that's all good moving forward.
Good. It's good for me to hear that because, a balanced market is always a healthier market, and
Right.
And it takes some of the craziness out of the equation. So coming back to it, because I know you work with a lot of sellers, the key is still, when working with sellers, to price the property correctly given what's happening right now.
For sure. I have a case right now. I have a listing where the seller is trying to make more money than they really should.
Really?
And as a list agent, I'm part of my job is to advise them, but also part of my job is to do as they ask. And so even though I've told them repeatedly, you're overpriced, it's just the way it is, you're overpriced. They're reluctantly lowering their price little by little.
Got it.
And unfortunately, I believe it's hurting them because the longer they're on the market, the more people look and the more people say, what's wrong with it?
Yeah.
Even though there's nothing wrong with it, they still will question and they still will think about it, and they may not come see it, or they may end up putting a lower offer than they would have originally.
Yeah. I think sometimes in the business of selling real estate, where the property is the product, and you're trying to match that property to the right buying party. It's almost as if it's a dating game. You know, you kind of wonder, like, hey, how come this home hasn't been picked up already by a chosen rightful buyer? Why is it still kind of lurking out there, right?
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah.
So
It's strange, but the real estate market is one of the few markets that people believe you can put it out there at an a 10%, 15% over value price, and they think it's going to sell, you know. And the strange part is that same person, if you told them, you know, I'm going to sell you this baseball hat for $4,000, they tell you you're crazy. Like, and it's not even a collectible, right? I'm not talking about a collectible hat, a normal hat, you know, like it doesn't make sense, but they would do it on their house. They would price it at something that doesn't make sense because they think it's worth it.
yeah, I think the tricky part there is helping your sellers, as you've already told me, helping your sellers kind of understand that while they probably have their emotional attachments to the property, and of course, an emotional attachment to a number that might be not so realistic. The reality is then you, as the real estate broker professional, helping them to see the light, which is how fast do you want to get this done? What is your next step? I want to help you get there rather than hold you back, right? That's
Right.
the conversation you probably are having with them.
Yeah, for sure. Exactly.
Yeah, I agree with you. I also see that there's more inventory coming onto the market, although it's kind of a slow crawl. And I think, as you talked about it, Stuart, you know, the recent event from last week, where, you know, the decision has been made to make the cost of borrowing money a lot cheaper. That's a relative way of describing it. I think it's kind of broke past what I call that emotional wall, right?
Yeah.
So with that, spot on, completely agree with you. Let's now move the conversation to when you're helping your clients, sellers or buyers, with contract, right? Contract to sell with the right buyer, or you're helping your buyer contract for them to buy. What are some contingency things that you kind of think about beforehand as to, does it make sense to waive that contingency, hold your guns to it? Can you give us some examples to what you found to be very successful?
Um, well, the number one contingency that is a problem in today's market is if someone has to sell their property first
True.
in order to buy.
Right.
There are many real estate agents that in this market are saying, why take a home sale? It doesn't make any sense. There's going to be another buyer that won't have a home sale right around the corner.
Right.
Now, if the property's been on the market for, in this market, a long time is 30 days. If the property's been on the market 30 days, then you might be able to leverage that. But
Right.
if it's anywhere within the first week or so of being listed, the list agent's telling the seller, don't take it.
Don't
And
take
so
it. Yeah.
that contingency is something that I am consistently telling my clients, let's work with your lender. Let's figure out if there's a way to do a bridge loan, or just, you know, be able to buy without selling and then you sell.
Right.
You know, anything, whatever's available loan wise so that you can purchase the home without the contingency, then let's do that instead.
Yeah. That's so important, because right now, while we want to move to a balanced market, you know, equal sellers versus equal buyers, we're not quite there yet.
No,
It's still tight enough inventory, especially those primo good properties, right?
for sure.
In your opinion, have you encountered some situations when you've worked with either side, seller or buyer, where you were alerted with like a property or an appraisal waiver. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, we've had situations where there's appraisal waivers, whether the seller's asking for it or whether the buyer's asking or willing to give it. It usually is a case when there's 3, 4, 5 offers on the property and the buyer's trying to get it, or the seller saying, okay, I'll take your offer. Yours is the highest, but I want to make sure you're really in the game and you're not just BSing me with this offer. Right.
Right.
Which unfortunately is happening in this market. If there's a competition, it did happen a lot last year, and is a little bit residual still, where someone will make an offer and it really isn't the offer they want to make, but they made it to win it. And then once they win it, they now know that the other buyers have gone away and they're hoping that they can leverage that and now come back after the seller and ask for a reduction.
Yeah, especially after that ideal initial milestone, the inspection review, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Where then they try to renegotiate the outcome, the terms, et cetera, et cetera. For all of you watching us today, as we're talking about this is important stuff, because when you're working with Stewart, when you're ready to work with Stewart, and alongside of that, with myself maybe delivering mortgage money for you, let me now lean in and give you a sneak peek as to when you might actually get an appraisal waiver, what we call a property inspection waiver. It usually happens when the combination of these things stack up. So here goes. The first is you're buying the subject property to live in as your primary residence, not a second home and not as an investment property, right? Primary residence is the easiest, lowest risk transaction in the eyes of the lender. The second is if you, buyer, may be putting in what is deemed by lenders to be a safe downstroke, your down payment. What is that number? Here's what I'm about to tell you. I'll whisper it. It's at least 20% down. Okay. Why? Because they feel like, hey, that's the creme de la creme low risk transaction. And then the third that I'm about to drop for you, Stuart's going to nod and say, oh, yeah, I've seen that before. It also depends on the property. And this is where, if the real estate broker has priced the property to sell, backed it up with enough CMAs, comparables, market analysis to make sure that, this number is the competitive number that we're pushing this product, this home out there for sale, that then stacks in the favor of you as a buyer who will benefit from a property inspection waiver and appraisal waiver. Why? Because lenders also use some online tools. We call them automated value models, just to do a gut check to make sure that the contract sales and purchase price is kind of in line with what the data is telling us. When that happens, here's the secret. When that happens, the lender will drop the property address into their system as part of moving the application forward. They'll take into account the contract sale purchase price, of course, maybe some concessions if that applies. And then the rest of it is all of the attributes of buyer's financing. When that happens, it happens quickly. You might just benefit from immediately an appraisal waiver. Good for you, buyer. You don't have to spend that money if you choose not to. And for you, seller, as you're being represented by Stewart, that's also another milestone that, you can breathe a little bit of a sigh of relief and also shave some time from start to finish. So that's my little mortgage pearl of wisdom as I'm explaining it to you in a real simple way for today. Let's now move the conversation, Stewart, to some things that you and I both know. I know you moved recently, right?
Yeah.
Prior to that, you sold and bought properties for yourself repeatedly.
Yep.
And I as well. What I want to now do for the sake of our audience members is educate them, share with them our perspective as to what I call the useful life of some of the common major home systems and mechanicals. Let's start off with the one important one. This time of the year, it can be important, and that is the sump pump. In your opinion, Stewart, what do you think is the useful life of an average sump pump?
So they claim it's 5 to 6 years is the average life of a sump pump. The reality is many sump pumps go past that because they're not used as much, and some last shorter than that because they're used all the time.
Right.
So it kind of depends on your house, but for the cost of what it does, the reality is whether your pump is bad or not, or whether you know it's going bad or not, if you're at the 5 or 6 year mark, you should just change it anyway. It only costs a couple $100, few $100. If you have any kind of handiness or mechanical know-how, you can change it yourself. If you don't, a handyman or plumber's going to charge you the most, but a handyman or a contractor, they're only going to charge you a couple $100. So all in, you're looking at the worst case scenario is $600-700.
Yeah.
Some people might say that's quite a bit of money to do just for the heck of it. Well, if you don't,
if you don't, it costs you more.
Right. One, if you don't have the right insurance, it's going to cost you a heck of a lot more.
Right.
If you have the right insurance, more than likely you still have $1,000, $2,000, $5,000 deductible. So that's all still more than the $700 that it would cost you to replace that pump, worst case scenario. So be safe, be smart, change that thing out every 5 to 6 years, and should never have a problem.
Yeah, it's better to embrace preventative maintenance rather than react to a disaster, right?
For sure. Yeah.
Spot on, spot on. Let's now move to the next major home systems and mechanicals, and that is the HVAC system. In your opinion, fast forward to today, what do you think might be the useful life of those systems?
So the HVAC systems are running at about, depending on the brand and depending on, what level you bought it at, if you bought the most basic, but they're running anywhere from 25 to 30 years.
Yeah.
And that is a max of what they're claiming they should be. That's their life expectancy max. I personally, in fact, this just happened to me before I sold my house. I had my condenser, which is the air conditioning. I had that condenser 5 years, and it sprung a leak. It went bad, and they couldn't replace it, or they couldn't repair it. They kept telling me, "Oh, this brand, it's known for leaking. It's known for problems." And so you're going to be consistently hunting for that leak, and unfortunately, you may never find it, and you're just going to be spending $500-600 at a crack every season. And that's if you're lucky, refilling Freon, looking for the repair, changing this out, changing that out. So they said, you just got to replace it.
Yeah.
And as disappointed as I was, I replaced it.
Right.
Yeah. I replaced it.
Yeah. Well, you replaced it. There's no good reason of throwing good money at a bad situation. It's better just to rip the Band-Aid off, get a brand new system. I encountered something very similar. I had one AC that lasted almost 10 years. And one day, it always happens this way. One day, hottest day in the summer, that unit, it was probably the condenser as well, just didn't keep the home and the property cool. So we had to replace that. So these are some things, sellers and buyers, as you are watching Stewart and myself, you have to keep this in mind, because when you are ready to sell a property and or buy a property, that telltale home inspection is going to be your recipe for success. So keep that in mind. Let's now talk about the last one. This one is big, right? The cliche is everyone wants a good roof over them. But, not just a home, but a good roof. So
Yeah.
in your opinion, what is the useful life of a roof on a home?
So that's a really tricky question, because there are many companies who will promote their roof shingle having a certain year warranty,
Right.
whether it's 10-year, 15-year, 20-year, 25-year, between 20 and 30 years are the most common terms that you hear today. It's a 25-year shingle. It's a 30-year shingle. The problem is people don't understand that just means like a manufacturer from breakdown on the shingle. That does not mean that you're not going to get a leak. That does not mean that it's not going to fall off, or it's going to break, or it's going to crack, or
Right.
that the hail damage is going to jeopardize the integrity of it.
Right.
So the reality is when an inspector looks at your roof, he just looks at the condition of it in comparison to what the original condition was supposed to be and how long it's in theory supposed to last.
Yeah.
So, I've seen them guess, they say, oh, well, it's probably got a good 5 years on it, 3 years on it, whatever the term is. And nothing happens.
Yeah.
And I've seen them guess, and my buyer's calling me 9 months later and they've got a massive leak.
Yeah.
There's no way to control that. There really is no way to control that.
Right. Right.
Roofs are tricky. They really are tricky. I've seen shingles on a roof that look like the roof has never been changed. The house was built in 1960, and you go inside the house and there's not a leak anywhere.
Yeah. Yeah.
How is that possible? 1960, the thing's 80 years old,
Right.
and not a leak anywhere. It
Yeah.
almost doesn't make sense, but it's happened. I've seen it.
Yeah.
And then I've seen roofs that look brand new and they've got 2 or 3 leaks.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
yeah. That is a tricky one. Roofs are subject to Mother Nature's cycles, right? So as you've heard this from Stewart and myself, keep your eye on the roof over your head, and when necessary, certainly reach out to a roofing contractor just to do this. Ask them to do an inspection for you. That way you have peace of mind as to, hey, what is the useful life remaining on this roof over my head? So as you are now wondering, you're wondering like, these are some key important things for me to know. If you don't have the wherewithal to do some of this yourself, if you don't have the relationships to these professionals to help you scope things out, certainly start a conversation with Stewart and or myself. We'll gladly point you in the right direction, so that you can make your plans successfully as you're selling and as you're buying. So in the spirit of wrapping up today's episode of Real Living in Chicagoland, how can you start a conversation with Stewart? Easy. Scan this QR code that you see next to him. And along the way, if you need mortgage money to make your purchase non-contingent on home sale, you can certainly scan the QR code for me. Both Stewart and I will gladly start a conversation with you to help you get to the next chapter that's in front of you. So for today, Stewart, Feliz Martes. You have a good day. I know you've got a full one in front of you as we both are wrapping up the next 3 months of this calendar year. There's still a lot of clients to help, a lot of homes to sell.
Yep, for sure. For sure. You know,
All
it's
right.
funny. I always look forward to this time of the year because things start to slow down a little bit and I can start to enjoy doing things. I go on vacation, I plan my vacations and stuff. But at the same time, I dread it.
Yeah.
Why? Because this is the time that I have to do my continuing education. I have to take
Same.
those classes. I have to I have to get caught up on all this stuff that I can't do during the busy season. So
Yeah. Yeah.
it kind of stinks from that standpoint.
Yeah, same for me. Same for us on our side. We
Yeah.
have a deadline that we must complete all of that by. And audience members, think about it. Why is that continuing education so important for you that we must embrace and complete? Because at the end of the day, we're professionals. You expect that from us in the outcome and the service that you want from Stewart and myself. So until we see each one of you, all of you, in the next episode of Real Living in Chicagoland, 4 weeks out. So hasta luego, Stewart.
All right. See ya.